Okay, good evening, everyone. We are continuing in the Mesilas Yesharim. It's funny, today, I believe today is a holiday, right? A statutory holiday. Doesn't feel like one. Seems no different than every other day for the last 2 months. But anyway, Baruch Hashem, we learn Torah every day, holidays or not. We were in the middle, getting a little more than halfway through this chapter, through this third chapter, the divisions of watchfulness. We talk about the idea of making the cheshbon hanefesh, al ken yomru hamosim bo b'cheshbon. The rabbi said we have to make a spiritual calculation, considering the weighing the value, what you think you benefit in the short term by doing an Avera versus the eternal punishment for that, versus the challenges we feel to do a mitzvah, which seem to be so hard, yet the rewards are so amazing. So measure up that difference. So, and the Gemara is saying those are the ones who can control their Yetzer Haras. So that's where we're over, where I've got the arrow pointing over here. These are the Moshlim B'Yitzram. So we ended off discussing about Sichon, not making a calculation. So the writings of Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz, he says a very interesting idea from the Bali Musar, a great idea over here. He says with the following mashal. He says, if a person is in a canoe and he's paddling in the river, then all you need is a paddle, a simple paddle. You want to turn left, you want to turn right, and you're able to go ahead. It's not a big deal. Obviously, you can't move without a paddle, but it's reasonable. On the other hand, if you've got a huge boat, like an ocean liner with tens of thousands of tons of cargo, clearly you're not going to be able to move it with a paddle. Okay, but what do you see? You see there's a sailor who's by the steering wheel of the boat, and he just turns the wheel, and boom, the boat goes in any direction he wants. So we see that the steering wheel is very powerful. It's very powerful to move this huge boat. But obviously you have to understand, if there's any malfunction with the motor, it's going to have lots of problems driving that boat. So we see there's a small little canoe and a big boat. Okay, so now let's see what is the, if we would consider now a person's ratzon, a person's own ratzon and his own powers. How would you compare it to that boat with the powerful engine of the boat? Who is more powerful? The engine of that powerful boat, or the ratzon and the desires of an individual person? And if we think about what certain individuals have done in the history of the world, you'll see there's no comparison to the powerful engine of a boat than to the powerful engine of the will of a person. For example, we can go to the Torah story of Shem, when he raped Dinah, and with Shem, the power of one person, what he was able to do, that he was able to make a big revolution in his city and force everybody to get circumcised because he lusted for this one person. And what happened? The whole city got wiped out. So you could see what one person is capable to do in terms of the whole world. Think about all the revolutions that came from certain people, lo aleinu with the Holocaust. It was one lunatic, really, who had power and caused 50 million people to die. Unfortunately, we have, a lot of debate exactly, but there seems to be one country where the coronavirus came from. And, if they did things correctly or not, it doesn't matter, but certain decisions that people made, and you can see the whole world is upside down because of few decisions that a few people made. Just like we know, ein davar omed lifnei ratzon, nothing can really stand in front of an unmitigated will. There's nothing that a will can't accomplish. So therefore, if you think about a person who's much more powerful than the most powerful luxury liner, if that person does not have a steering wheel as an apparatus, you're not going to be able to keep yourself in control. That huge ocean liner, if there's no steering wheel, it's going to go out of control and cause tremendous damage. So now we got to ask ourselves, what is in the mashal here? What's the steering wheel for the human being to make sure that he doesn't go out of control? So that's what this Zal is saying. It's the one who's able to control his Yetzer, because the Yetzer is what's so powerful. So what enables you to conquer that Yetzer? It's those who are Bo B'cheshbon, making a spiritual accounting of what's going on, measuring the profit of Avera against the loss, the eternal loss to that, and what the loss in doing a mitzvah versus the eternal reward for that. And that Bo V'cheshbon is the steering wheel of man, says Rab Yerucham. And with that, he can really steer his will in a way, in a powerful way, in the direction of what's meant to go to. And all of man's success depends on that. When he thinks about the realities of every decision he makes, and he makes that cheshbon, then he will be able to steer himself in the correct way. The person does not make cheshbonos, it's like nobody's at the wheel and the boat's just going in any direction to destroy itself. So that again is showing you how important that cheshbon hanefesh is in terms of this watchfulness. So let's continue with the next paragraph over. I've got the cursor over here, v'zeh. And this is zeh ki ha'etza hamitis hazos. This true counsel. Lo yuchlo loses osov lo liras amita ela osum shvar yatsu mitachas yad yisru umoshlabo. Those people who can really understand that counsel, that advice, and the truth of it, and to see the truth, are those who already escaped from the Yetzer Hara and they rule it. Somebody is still tied up by his Yetzer Hara. His eyes can't see this truth. He can't recognize it. Because his Yetzer Hara blinds his eyes literally. He's like a person going in the dark, where there's all kinds of stumbling blocks, yet his eyes aren't able to see them. So Luzzatto now is saying a big chiddush. He says only somebody who has truly escaped his Yetzer Hara and rules over the Yetzer Hara is capable of seeing the truth in this advice of making a cheshbon and nefesh. But if you don't yet rule over your Yetzer Hara, it's hard for you to understand what's so critical about making this cheshbon and nefesh. And he says he's like a person who's going in the dark and he cannot see the stumbling blocks. And now we continue the next section over here. V'umasha Amra, this is what the Gemara Bava Metzia says. On the pasuk in Tehillim, Tashis Choshech, Hashem, you made darkness, by Hilaila, and it's night. What does that mean? Of course it's night. He says, this is this world. Shedoima Lalayla. This world is considered to be like night. Even in broad daylight, Gemara is saying it's like you're in the dark. Now, what does that mean? Try to understand how wondrous is this statement of the Gemara. Somebody goes deep to understand what's going on over here. When we talk about the darkness of the night, it can cause two types of mistakes for a person. Now, again, what he is saying is just like the darkness of the night causes you not to make mistakes when you're groping in the darkness, same thing is the eye of the intellect, so to speak. and there's a darkness that makes it difficult to see through what the reality is as well. And when a person goes in the dark, what are the two problems that can happen? Number one, either it conceals the eyes, it can't see what's in front of it at all. And if you don't see what's in front of it, you just stumble all over things and get yourself hurt. Or the darkness can confuse him. Shiro Amud Ki'ilu Adam, when he sees something that a pillar appears to be like a person. Va'adam Ki'ilu Amud, or a person likes like a pillar. In other words, he sees something that's not real at all. Either the first mistake is he doesn't see the problem, or he distorts and thinks he's seeing one thing, but it's another thing. So that's in the plain old darkness. But now we'll go to this world that's dark. Says, so is the physical coarseness of this world. To the eye of the intellect, it's like darkness. And causes two mistakes. The physical of this world blinds our eyes completely. And has two mistakes. Number one, it doesn't allow the eye to see the stumbling blocks that are there. It just stumble along all kinds of things, and that's bad enough. And in the foolish people, they walk so confidently. And they fall and get lost without even being afraid to begin with. That's what it says in Mishlei. Derech Rishayim Ka'afela, the way of the wicked people is like the darkness. Lo yada b'ma yichshel. They don't even know what they're stumbling over. Va'omer, another pasuk says in Mishlei there, Oram ra'eh ra'av v'nistar upsoim avru v'nanashu. Same thing. The wise person fears and stays away from evil, but the fool, he just sins and he feels very confident. It says, "Uksil misav." Yeah, that pasuk. Uksil misav botech kilavim barilem kula, because their hearts are so clear to them. They think everything is so clear. They feel so secure. And they fall before they even know there was a stumbling block. So the first problem is you're not even aware of the problems. You have this many times in all kinds of scenarios. One of the most obvious scenario is a nice frum boy or girl going to a university that's a co-ed university that has all kinds of different hashkafos than Yiddishkeit. And for some people, they think, listen, you have to go to university, you have to find a job. You don't realize what kind of terrible stumbling blocks are there. And how people you have lots of stories where frum people, I'm not saying all frum people, and I'm not giving a discussion of pros and cons, you should go to university or not. But I'm just saying, if a person doesn't realize that there are stumbling blocks at university, then that's part of the blindness of that. Because there's all kinds of kfira that's fed into people, and that's just assumed that's the way everybody thinks and talks and this and that. And if you're not careful, you're going to fall into all kinds of problems. And you're not going to realize you fell into that problem. But that's not the biggest problem. He continues, V'atos hashniya, the second mistake, V'ukoshim in Rishon is even worse than the first one. Shemata riyasam, that your vision is fooled and distorted at sharoim hara ki'ilu mamish tov, where you see the bad, and then to you it really looks good. V'hatov, and that which is good, ki'ilu hara, as if it's bad. Umitochach mischaskim umachsikim asemurim, and if they think that the bad is good, then they're going to even strengthen their hold on that and reconfirm that what they're doing is the right thing. Because if you think the bad is good, of course you want to do that as much as possible. So ki ein dai shechasrhem riyas ha'emes liros harash and it's bad enough. It's not enough, really, that they're lacking the proper way of seeing things to see the evil that's in front of them. But they're looking to find all kinds of proofs that this is the right way of doing things. Mochichim, that prove it. They'll even give you, for example, proofs from the Torah, so to speak. They'll quote something from the Torah to defend their position, Lisfarasayim Haros, for their bad logic, for the Sam Hakozvos, and to their false ideologies. So people are not really realizing that that this is an evil, and they think this is amazing. And they're going to say, they're going to now, by the way you look at life, if that's the way you look at things, you'll take everything else and distort it. You'll bring rayas from sukkim. You'll come with all kinds of logic. And you're going to say, this is really the way things should be done. You don't realize that this is truly an evil thing that you think is proper. And it's totally the wrong path completely. This is a really bad evil. That envelops the person. You're totally surrounded. You can't see beyond it. Okay? Umeviyasan el ber shachas, it brings you to the pit of destruction. Umashomar akosav, that's what the text says. Hashmein lev ha'om hazev ha'oznav ha'kaved ve'enav ha'shed pen, etc., etc. Where it says the heart of this people has become fattened and its ears heavy, their eyes covered shut, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their hearts and turn back and be healed. Okay, the call said, they all do because of the influence of the darkness, and they're held captive, tachas memshalas yisrom, under the domain of its yetzer. But those who have left that jail, so to speak, they can see the truth for what it is. And they're able to advise other people of what the proper way to do things is. So only those who have been able to get through this are able to see this. And he's going to give a beautiful mashal in a minute. But what you see from all this is a very big concept. The Rabbi Chanan Wasserman has a huge piece on this in his Kobetz Mamorim that I'll be happy to send a copy to anybody who wants it. I have it translated. It's in Hebrew and in English. And the basic gist of it is as follows. And he says, he asks, it says that, there's a mitzvah to believe in Hashem. It's one of the 630 mitzvahs, believe in Hashem. So he says, belief is something like either you have it or you don't. What if a person doesn't believe in Hashem? So what do you want from the person? And what kind of mitzvah is it to believe in Hashem? I mean, if you believe in Hashem, then you believe in Hashem. And if you don't believe in Hashem, how are you going to come on to believe in Hashem? It's not like putting on tefillin. You can put on tefillin. You understand how to put on tefillin. Don't understand how to put on tefillin. Doesn't really make much of a difference. But on the other hand, if we are dealing with a person who just doesn't believe in Hashem, so what do you want from the guy? He doesn't believe in Hashem. And and if you do, you believe. So you believe, what's there to do? And more than that, he talks, there's the idea that believing Hashem is one of the 613 mitzvahs. That means when a boy is bar mitzvah and the girl is bat mitzvah, they're mechuyev in this mitzvah. Now, there's a lot of great philosophers who were very much older and wiser than a bar and a bar mitzvah, and they still don't believe in Hashem. So how can we expect a bar mitzvah boy to understand this? He asks a whole slew of questions revolving around this idea. How could you expect a non-Jew to know the 7 Noahide laws? All kinds of questions. And let me just switch my screen to just share something a little cute with you for a second. Let's see if I can do this. Just give me 1 second. We'll undo one share and move on to another one. Okay, I think you see my little picture over here that asks, why are there so many atheists in the world? There are so many atheists in the world. So what's our answer to that? Because really, if you think about it, there's a lot, there's so many, how could Hashem expect the whole world to understand that there's a God and all these other things? So the answer is very simple, based on a pasuk. It says in Sefer Shoftim that bribery blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. In other words, bribery has such a powerful effect on mankind. In any case, in halacha, the Gemara has many instances where great Torah sages, if somebody did them a little favor before they had to make a court case, they would already excuse themselves from the case because they know they couldn't see things properly. Because once you have a little bribe, it's impossible not to somehow have a little feeling towards the person who bribed you. Well, what is the greatest possible bribery that a person could have, if not the physical pleasures of this world? The physical pleasures of this world, there isn't anything as pleasurable as that. And people who want to have all these pleasures, but if there is a God, and God says, you know, unrestrained pleasures that cross borders and halacha are not allowed, people are not going to be inclined to want to hear that. Now, the real question is, and here's the real question, how could somebody be so stupid not to believe in Hashem? How could a person be so stupid not to believe there's a creator? We know all the famous mishalim that Rabbi Akiva and the other great rabbis would speak to people, and the one with, I believe, Rabbi Yehuda Levi, whatever. There's all kinds of stories where somebody was working on a poem, and he was halfway through a poem, and he walked out. He was an atheist, didn't believe in God, and as he walked out, the tzaddik went and finished up the whole poem. And when the person came back, he looks at the sees the poem, and he says, "Who did this?" So they said, "I don't know. The inkwell just spilled, and it spilled and all over made this poem." Are you crazy? That's not possible. How could that happen? Don't you see that it was written so well and it fits into everything that was before? There was thought and everything for that. How is it possible that it could happen? You're crazy. It has to have been someone had to do it. So he says, so I want you to listen to what you're saying. Isn't the world far more complex? And if the world is that much more complex, shouldn't you believe that creation bespeaks purpose and there's a creator who created it? So if you really think about it, this idea of creation by design, where the world is designed so perfectly, and the mathematical probability of this happening by accidents is not possible. It's not possible for an unbelievably beautiful world to be created the way it does, the way it works so perfectly. And to say it was an accident, you have to literally be a meshuganer to not believe that. So what's the answer? This answer is bribery. Because even something that's the most open and shut case, I don't want to get into the current politics that's going on in the United States, where it's as clear as day where the corruption lies. And yet, many of the left-wing politicians do not want to see it. Because why? Because they have issues. They don't want to give up this power. They've been bribed to power, and they can't even see the truth to help them. Now, it's very interesting to hear somebody from the other side make their own hodah. I don't know if a lot of you heard of Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley was a British novelist who wrote a bestseller, Brave New World. And he was a very leading person involved in evolution and atheism and all these things. And you want to have, drug-fueled utopia, everything going on over there. But then later on in life, he wrote a small essay that a lot of people don't want you to know about. And it's called, I forgot the exact lashon of it, something like Admissions of an Avowed Agnostic. I don't have the exact lashon in front of me, but that's basically what he says. And this is the quote where, so to speak, he's being choser b'tshuva. He said, I had motive for not wanting the world to have a meaning. Consequently, assumed that it had none. and was able without any difficulty to find satisfying reasons for this assumption. The philosopher who finds no meaning in the world is not concerned exclusively with a problem in pure metaphysics. He's also concerned to prove there is no valid reason why he personally should not do as he wants to do, or why his friends should not seize political power and govern in the way that they find most advantageous to themselves. And then he ends at the end, for myself, the philosophy of meaninglessness was essentially an instrument of liberation, sexual and political. So what are the admissions of this avowed agnostic or avowed atheist, whatever the Lashon was? He says, I wanted to be an immoral person. I wanted a person to change all the politics. So it made sense not to believe there was any creator. So there you hear it from the horse's mouth himself. The people who do not believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu is because the bribery of this world is so strong that there's no way that they're able to overcome that. And that's the same thing that the Mesil Sharm is talking about over here. I just have to get back my 1 second. Let's get myself back over here on track. Just 1 second. Yeah. Okay, let's just move it up to the next point over here. Yes. So on this topic of the bribes, very interesting statement over here. Rav Steinman says, when he speaks about how the Yetzer Hara blinds the eyes, he says, in truth, the doctors should be the biggest believers. He says, how much wisdom is contained in the eye? Millions of cells. And if God forbid something's blocked, then the brain, the eyes, it's all finished. So they should be motivated to believe in Hashem more than anybody else. And he says, but we see B'davka the opposite. It doesn't interest them. Why? Because this Yetzer Hara is so powerful for them along these same ideas. And the Maril Diskin would say, if we do not see an atheist, if we did not see an atheist with our own eyes, wouldn't believe that there exists people capable of maintaining such bizarre views. He says, it's so crazy to be an atheist. But that's the point. It's that bribery does not allow us to get past to see the truth. And that's what Luzzatto was saying about the darkness of this world. This world is dark and we see things upside down. We see the opposite. That which is bad and we say is good, and that which is good is bad, and we don't know. We don't know what we're going to stumble over, and we don't know, and the things that we should think one way or the other way, and we totally mess it all up. And then we'll just close with this beautiful analogy. Halamaz Adoma, what could this be compared to? Lagana Muvucha, a labyrinth, meaning those gardens that have pathways. You have big gardens with big hedges going up and up and up, and you're not able, and you just go into it, and you can't see through the bushes, and it's a whole maze, and you're trying to get out of it. It's a garden that's made for amusement. That the noblemen know about it. That the hedges are like walls. There's all kinds of confusing pathways. They all look the same. It's all one hedge. This is a hedge, that's a hedge. How are you going to know your way? And basically, I'll say outside there, and the point is to get to the main hallway that's in the middle, to get to the end of that. And many paths, which you think are a good path, going to take you far away. So who is really able to know which way to go? Certainly the person who's going there doesn't know how to go. Who could help him? Someone who is familiar with the path. Someone who's familiar with the path and knows the path can tell him which direction you have to go to. And that person can give you that advice. And that's the trick in life. is that there's so many pathways, but the person who's already traveled the path, even though he doesn't necessarily have to travel, but he knows what all the paths are, can help us with that. And the trick is, can you be willing, as you're going on that path, to listen to those people who are giving the instructions of what's the path? They said, I've been there, done that, and I can help you with that idea. And if you can trust them, then you'll find the right path. And what's he saying this is analogous to? He's saying somebody who has not yet conquered his Yetzer Hara. He's in the middle of these pathways. He can't tell one pathway for another. But those who control their Yetzer Hara, they're able to see the different pathways. They've gone through them and they're able to give the advice. And what's the advice that they give? Again, is bo cheshbon. Let's make a cheshbon, because we've gone through life and we see that this is the way we're able to get this done. We just about finished the chapter. I'm already going a little bit overboard. So we'll just wrap this up quickly tomorrow. And B'ez Hashem, we'll move on to the next chapter to really get into the details of how we begin to practice this watchfulness. Okay, everybody should have a good night. B'ez Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. And tomorrow night's Parsha class will touch on a lot of these ideas that we're talking about as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shkoyach, have a good evening.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.